Hello again and welcome to the Warhammer 40K Imperial Guard Tactics video. In today's video we will be continuing our series of videos aimed at how to beat the Genestealer cult and their more common competitive tactics and units that you are likely to see on the battlefield. For those of you who are new to the series, it's primarily aimed at how, as an Imperial Guard player, you can counter these tactics, and how you can counter the cult. But the general principles will apply to almost any army. So just because this is an Imperial Guard channel doesn't mean there are things you can't learn from this. And bear in mind that most competitive armies out there do use at least or loyal 32 of Imperial Guardsmen. And therefore these tactics will probably still be relevant to you if you're using an Imperial Soup army. So what are we going to be looking at today? Today we are going to be looking at Aberrants. Now if any of you are wondering, the picture that I'm using today is of my own converted Genestealer cult Aberrants. I made these from Goliath Gangers and just spare bits from a mixture of the Neophyte hybrid kit, the mining version, and the Acolyte / Metamorph hybrid kit. The reason I did that is if you get them from Games Workshop, it's £25 for 5 Aberrants. If you get them from the Goliath Gangers, it's £25 for 10 guys, and all you need to do is a head swap and use some bits and you're there. So it's like 2 for the price of 1 essentially. I'm sure some people are going to ask that question down in the comments, so that's how you do it. It's very simple. You just head swap, arm swaps, done. Now, Aberrants. You are definitely going to see these guys in any half decent Genestealer cult list. At least one squad of between 8 and 10 of them. They are possibly one of the strongest Genestealer cult units available at the moment. And so it is vitally important you know how to deal with them. So what we're going to do first is we're going to cover what the Aberrants are. I'm going to cover how the Genestealer cult player will effectively use them against you. And then what can you do to counter this? Okay? So, first things first, the Aberrants are an elite choice, and they cost 16 points per Aberrant. Okay, now that does not include any war gear, so 16 points base. Now you have to give them at least a power pick, which is 9 points. So a bare minimum, an Aberrant's going to cost 25 points. Now, you can also give them a big, massive, heavy power hammer, which is another 16 points. Literally doubles the cost of the Aberrant. You're not likely to see too many of the power hammers. Okay, most people will go with mass picks because there's a reason for that. You can buff Aberrants into the stratosphere. And the hammers, whilst good, are not the be-all and end-all. You might see a couple in each squad. Now, what's really interesting about Aberrants, just speaking of options they have available to them, is they have the ability to take 2 sergeants in a squad. Essentially, for every 5 Aberrants you have, you can take 1 Aberrant hypermorph. It's very similar to most other sergeants. Like he gets an extra attack, for example, meaning he has 3 attacks base. But he also has access to the heavy improvised weapon, which is only 10 points. It's only 1 point more than a power pick, but it is extremely powerful. It's like a, well, you know, but they get a hypermorph tail, I should say, which is an additional at strength AP -1 attack. Okay, and the heavy improvised weapon is like a light thunder hammer. So a combination of like a thunder hammer and a big chopper. So it's AP minus. It's a strength times 2, AP -1, damage 2. But the big thing here is for each attack made for this weapon, you get to do 2 attacks. So make 2 hit rolls for each attack made with this weapon. Which means suddenly, if you give your Aberrant Hypermorph one of these, he's getting 6 attacks base. So you can see the sergeants are very, very powerful. But let's take a look at the base stats of the Aberrants, just so you get a full idea of how these work. So Standard movement 6 inches. Weapon skill 3+, ballistic skill 6+. That ballistic skill is essentially useless. They have no ranged weapons. Okay, they're a pure close combat unit. They've got a base strength of 5, a toughness of 4, 2 wounds, 2 attacks, leadership 7, and a 5+ armor save. Now, so straight away looking at these guys, you can tell they're the strongest infantry available to the cult, and they are the toughest infantry available to the cult. You could argue that pure strains are of equal toughness. That's true, they are toughness 5, but the pure strains only have 1 wound. So these guys have got 2 wounds and a toughness 4. Nasty. The Aberrant Hive Wolf, like I said, is 3 attacks base. Interestingly, he doesn't increase their leadership. They are base leadership 7, which actually makes them one of the lowest leadership units in the cult codex. Everyone else has at least access to leadership 8. These guys have only got leadership 7, so bear that in mind. It could be useful later on. Now, like I said, the weapons they have to have, you have to give them at least a power pick, which is like a power. It's like a power axe and a power fist combined. So it has its strength user AP -2 like a power axe, but it's D3 damage. Okay. Now what's really important here is every Aberrant gets one of these, but also gets a rending claw. And for every attack that they make with a power pick, they can make an additional attack with the rending claw. So don't be deceived. The fact that these basic Aberrants only have 2 attacks each, that's not true. They've got 4 attacks if they've got a power pick. So they've got 2 attacks at strength user AP -2 D3 damage, and 2 attacks at strength user AP -1 1 damage. But if they get a 6+, it's AP -4. That's the rending claws. So these guys put out their high strength, and they put out a high volume of attacks. Because don't forget, you've got that Aberrant Hive Morph in there as well. With his heavy improvised weapon, gets 6 attacks. At strength ×2, AP -1, 2 damage. Now the heavy power hammer is a thunder hammer. At strength ×2, AP -3, 3 damage. But you won't see a lot of these because you have to subtract -1 to hit with them. So the Aberrants are only hitting on 4s with those things. So these guys, you can see straight off the bat that they are strong and tough. They have one very important special rule called Bestial Figure, which means each time they reduce the damage characteristic of an attack by 1 to a minimum of 1, and they get a 5+ feel no pain. So these guys have got 2 wounds each, multi-wound weapons. They've got to be at least damage 3, or the Aberrants don't care about them, and they get a 5+ feel no pain. So they're tough. Now, but obviously these guys can be caught ambushed in. Okay? Obviously. Now what these guys do, you will see these be caught ambushed in every single time. Okay? Maybe someone will put them in a truck, but generally you want to caught ambush these guys. Okay? Which means they're going to be popping up 9 inches away from you. Now bear in mind, you might think, well, 9 inches, that's a pretty low chance of getting the charge off. You'd be wrong. Because the Gene Cult have ways of making sure that these guys are almost guaranteed to get into combat. First one, most obvious one, is the Stratagem, a perfect ambush. Lets the Aberrants, when they pop up from cult ambush, move D6 inches towards you. Second thing that they can do is go Cult to the Four-Armed Emperor. The turn that they pop up, they get +1 to their charge range. So suddenly they're D6 +1. Then you can add in an elite unit called a Clamavus. It's a special support character which essentially gives them another +1 to their charge range. So suddenly these guys are D6 +2 inches on the charge. D6 +2 inches closer towards you. Then you can go anoint. You can take you can put these guys in special detachment, make them anointed throng to get another +1 to their charge. So suddenly you thought these guys were popping up 9 inches away from you. They're at least 3 inches closer to you, so they're only 6 inches away, plus another D6, which on average is going to be at least 3 inches. Don't forget there's a command point reroll available if it goes a bit wrong for the Gene Cult player. And suddenly you're looking at a close combat unit which has probably only got a 3-inch charge away from you. And that's if you screen well. Now, obviously some of you are thinking, well, let's do some Scout Sentinels. That's true. Scout Sentinels are very, very good at pushing Aberrants back. But bear in mind, even that they will still get very close to your Scout Sentinels, and that they're not going to be a million miles away from your lines, even with the Scout Sentinels pushing them back. Okay, but we'll get into that later. Now, other ways the Genius Cult player can buff them is you can take. You probably won't see this very often, but they may take it's one of the new characters, so the Biophagus. We won't get into that, but essentially that has the Biophagus has the ability to either give them +1 strength, +1 toughness, or +1 attacks. So straight away you can see they're going to get more attacks. There's a banner that the cult have access to called the Icon of the Cult Ascendant, which gives them another +1 strength. You'll probably see that with them because the banner bearer also lets them reroll 1s and they feel no pain. Yeah, there's so many buffs. Essentially, guys, these guys are able to get very close to you, and they are able to deal with anything. They will tear through tanks. I think the most common the second thing you've got to be aware of is a Genius Cult player will very much try and get the power Might from Beyond off on these guys, the psychic power. It gives them +1 strength and attack, which means you're looking at 6 attacks from each one of the basic pick guys through the pick 3 from the Rending Claw, and 8 attacks from the heavy improvised weapon guys. That hybrid, 9 if you include the hypermorph tail as well. So these guys have got a lot of attacks at a very high strength. You're looking at easily strength 7, +1 for the banner, +1 for Might from Beyond. Okay, easy looking at that. So how do we counter a unit that's got huge volumes of attacks, can get close to us, is incredibly tough, and has incredible high strength? Well, there are a few things that you have to be willing to do. First off, you're going to have to accept that these guys are going to get close to you, and you're going to have to accept that they are going to be able to charge what they want. Rule number 1 of facing Genius Cult is, it's a difficult pill to swallow, but for the first couple of turns, maybe up to turn 3, the Genius Cult player is going to be in control of the battlefield, and you're probably going to be reacting to him. Okay, not an enviable position to be in. Controlling the battlefield is one of the number 1 ways of winning the battlefield. But bear in mind, with the cult ability to cult ambush, he's going to be able to get these aberrants where he wants, when he wants. Thing is you just have to be willing to sacrifice a certain units. Okay, the best thing you could. It sounds obvious, but obviously the best thing you can do is screen. But it's not just a case of just screening and pushing them out. You'll have to have multiple levels of screens. Okay, a good Genius Cult player isn't just going to throw his aberrants into the middle of the meat grinder. Okay, they're good, but they're not invincible. Okay, that's something you have to bear in mind. Now, you're going to have multiple layers of screens for these guys. Okay, Scout Sentinels are good, but they can... I'd say Scout Sentinels are good, but they're not the best, because the problem is they're so fragile that a good Genius Cult player will try and kill them on his turn 1 with his spare poxy bits of firepower. Okay, it's not necessarily important what you screen with, it's how deep your screens go. So the Genius Cult player is going to come down, and you're going to have to try and screen them out. But I would say you're going to need to have at least 2 to 3 lines of just infantry. Okay, just screening. Just be willing to accept that whatever these guys get into combat with, they're going to kill, and therefore you can dictate what they're going to kill. this is a unit, a 10-man Aberrant unit with 2 hammers, 2 improvised weapons, and 6 picks. It's going to be costing close to 300 points. Okay? If that 300-point unit comes in and absolutely brutalizes 2, 3 guardsman squads, that's fine. They've killed stuff that you don't care about. Okay? That's the key. That's how you got to think. These guys are going to kill something. It's your job to make sure that they kill things on your terms. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing they have to be aware of is that one of their main sources of power, which is a +1 strength, +1 attack, comes from a psychic power. Okay? Comes from psychic power. You can try, if you can deny that psychic power, you're gravy. Okay? You're gonna be in a much better position. And it already is quite difficult for them to get off. It's power level 7. Now they do have a relic that allows them to get +1 to their casting. So they can be trying to get off on a 6. But still, you can really, if you just have an astropath nearby, you've got a good chance that they're not going to get the power off. And you've got a good chance that you'll be able to block it. Okay, so try and deny that psychic power. Okay, try your hardest. Try, if you have a few cheap psychers close-ish to the front lines, Gene Occult player could make a mistake. He could deploy his megs a bit further back, like instinctively trying to be out of deny range. That might affect the way he deploys his Aberrants, and you might buy yourself a turn. Okay? Next thing to remember about these guys, and it's true about a lot of Gene Occult units, is they're tough, but they're not that tough. At the end of the day, guys, they're only toughness 4, and they have a lot of wounds. They're only toughness 4, but they only have a 5+ save. Okay? So, what's really good at killing these guys is things like heavy bolters. Mass lasgun fire. You'll just strip them down. You will just strip them down. Okay? So, the key is not to panic when the Aberrant bomb turns up. Punishers will just make mincemeat of these guys. Exterminators will not. Do not get lulled into the false sense of security. Do not shoot any of your autocannons at these guys. It is a waste of time. They reduce the damage of the autocannon from 2 down to 1, essentially making it an overpriced heavy bolter. You want to saturate fire on these guys. More than anything else, you want to saturate fire. Overcharged plasma, basically a waste of time. They're just going to take 1 damage to 2. Okay? Multiple damage weapons are not the way to deal with these guys. Battle cannons, even they are not the way to deal with these guys. Heavy bolters, Punisher cannons, mass firepower. Also, flamers. These guys are going to want to get really close to you. Having a few flamers in your squads, heavy flamer sentinels nearby, hellhounds love toasting these guys. Hellhounds love toasting Aberrants. Because every weapon that a Hellhound has wounds them on 3s. They don't care about the multiple damage. You're doing 3d6 wounds auto-hitting. That are going to wound on 3s. That reduce the Aberrant's armor save down to a 6 up, followed by a 5 + feel no pain. They're tough, but they're not invincible. The thing is, the mistake people tend to make is they tend to shoot multiple damage weapons at them. Because they think, these guys are big and tough and scary, I must shoot multiple damage weapons. No. This is Gene Occult. Flip it on its head, reverse logic, drown in shots. That's your number 1 way of killing these guys. So how does that look in your list? You have your frontline squads, which you want at most to be armed with a flamer. Accept those guys are going to die. Accept it, move on. Behind those guys, you want another rank of infantry with grenade launchers, flamers, and heavy bolters. Behind them, you want another rank of that. Because you've got to understand, your opponent could have 2 Aberrant bombs. 1 for turn 2, 1 for turn 3. Don't think just because you survived the first one that you'll survive the second one. Okay? So bear all that in mind. Also, don't forget that it's not for the Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor trait, which gives them +1 to the charge when the turn they come in. It's for the Twisted Helix. They have a way to make the Aberrants fight again. Okay? Let's see if I can find what it's called. It's definitely in there. Monstrous Biohorrors. 3 command points. Your Aberrant, Twisted Helix can fight again. Okay? Now, there's another thing to bear in mind with these guys, which I said we'd come back to later. Their leadership. It's not great. Their leadership's 7. So, think about this. These guys are going to be operating in amongst your lines, doing a lot of damage. They're not likely to be next to a Patriarch, giving them Fearless. They might have a rerollable leadership test thanks to an Acolyte Icon wall that's near them, but they're not going to have a particularly high leadership. Now, this might sound crazy, but one of the best powers that you can use against these guys is Terrifying Visions. If you can use Terrifying Visions against these guys, you've got them down to leadership 5. You only need to you need to kill like 3 or 4 Aberrants, and they're going to start. They've got a good chance they're going to start losing them. If you get them down to leadership 5 and then kill half the squad, anything that your opponent rolls, that's how many guys are going to run away when Battle Shock kicks in. And like I said, these guys are very likely not going to be near a Patriarch. Patriarchs don't seem to be too favoured by competitive players, which I think is silly. I think they're invaluable. There's a good chance that these guys, especially if this guy goes Twisted Helix and he goes barreling off, fighting twice, piling in twice, and he forgets the conga line back, very likely that you'll be able to get these guys on the leadership. That's one of their biggest weaknesses. So there you go, guys. It's really important to have multiple levels of screens. It's really important to understand that they're tough, but they're not invincible. Really, when these guys come in, you have to focus them down. You have to. You cannot afford to let these guys run amok. You cannot, the only other thing to say about them is that the average strength that they're likely to get up to is 7, not 8. Now that's not. It's difficult, but it means they're not going to be wounding Leman Rusters apart from on 5s. Okay, best you might get them to leadership 8, but they're not great at absolutely cracking through really tough targets. But they can do it. I wouldn't let that lure you into a false insecurity go and start trying to lock them up with a Leman Rust. They'll probably just tear through it. Okay, but it's just something to bear in mind. If you've got like a Knight Gallant, for example, close combat Knight, if he starts going in there, he'll do. If he can kill half the squad, the other half probably won't have quite enough to bring him down, and he'll probably make most of his points back killing a squad of Aberrants. So bear that in mind. Yeah, so that's it, guys. Flamers are great against them. Lasguns, grenade launchers, heavy bolters, absolutely fantastic against these guys. They're like a really tough elite unit, like Terminators, but unlike Terminators, they're really susceptible to mass firepower. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Is there anything that I've missed? Is there anything you'd like me to cover going forward with the Tactics series? Please let me know. And of course, I'll see you guys next time.